Hello, good afternoon, and you are very, very welcome this afternoon to the National Concert Hall, or at least virtually to the National Concert Hall, because none of us are actually physically in the National Concert Hall. But we're delighted to present to you this percussion masterclass, specifically tuned percussion. It's a first for us, and we're delighted to welcome the wonderful Richard O'Donnell to be presenting this masterclass with us. We hope that you will stay with us throughout the afternoon, and we have four participants who are each going to have a session of approximately half an hour with Richard. Richard, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Nigel. And just before we start, because I'm terrible at forgetting at the end, thank you guys so much for having us. We're all looking for any type of great musical activity during these strange times. So, we really appreciate the chance to and students especially, this is for them. So they appreciate the chance to go forward, and the concert hall is fantastic for doing that for them. So thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much, Richard. And we're delighted to have four of Ireland's and abroad's up and coming percussion players today. Richard, you're very welcome, as I said. Richard O'Donnell was section leader, principal percussion at the National Symphony Orchestra from 1997 to 2020. Previous to this, he was a member of the RTE Concert Orchestra, the National Symphony Orchestra of Colombia, and the Basque National Orchestra in San Sebastian, Spain. In the field of education, Richard is Professor of Percussion at the Royal Irish Academy of Music, where, in addition to teaching, he also directs the percussion ensemble and is the founder and director of the annual RIAM Day of Percussion. Beyond the orchestra, Richard has also been very active as a performer in the fields of contemporary music. He was a member of Concord for over 25 years, and in addition has performed with the Crash Ensemble, Vox 21, as well as various freelance ensembles. Many of Richard's students have particularly successful careers in music and currently have positions in the RTE National Symphony Orchestra, the RTE Concert Orchestra, the Army No. 1 Band, the Garda Band, and indeed in orchestras and universities in Germany and South America. Richard, we're delighted to have you, and we do hope that you enjoy the afternoon with us as much as I'm sure we will. We have four participants, as I said, and the way we are going to manage this, we will have two participants, and then we'll have a very short break of about 3 minutes, just stretch the legs, get some air, and then we will have our final two participants. At the end of the session, at approximately 4:30, we will have a Q&A session. So we'll have a Q&A session with our participants and with questions from the public in general. So if you're watching the masterclass and you would like to address a question to Richard, please do so via the chat facility, either on our YouTube channel or our Facebook page, wherever you happen to be watching. So I'm very happy to welcome our first participant, and she is Chi-Wei Ho. And Chi-Wei is a percussion player from Taipei, and she has a recital artist diploma, and she is currently a master's student studying at the Royal Irish Academy of Music. Chi, you're very, very welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here.
Not at all. So, Richard and Chi, I'm going to leave you together, and we will see you in about half an hour for the changeover. And Chi and Richard, I hope you enjoy the session.
Okay, thanks a lot, Nigel.
Thank you.
So, Chi,
Yes.
do you have the Glockenspiel today? I don't see you on the screen,
Yes.
but I'm sure you're there. There you are. How are you keeping today? Everything good?
Yeah, everything is good, and I'm just so excited about this.
Oh, I know, it's fantastic. Great opportunity. So I thought, okay, so you're standing by the Glockenspiel. Why don't we start with that? I know you're doing two pieces, one orchestral repertoire piece, The Pines of Rome by Respighi, and another a Japanese marimba piece, which we'll talk about in a bit. So I know with The Pines of Rome, this was originally written as a piece for a keyboard glockenspiel. And this is an instrument that's really not used very much anymore, partially because of volume, expense. And we play it as percussionists, we play on a regular glockenspiel. The piece does have a few challenges as a result of having transferred from basically a two-hand instrument to a two mallet, in this case 3 or 4 mallet instrument. So why don't we just play a few bits, and then we'll see how you get on, and maybe I'll have a few comments, maybe I don't. Okay? So do you want to just start at the top?
Yes.
Okay, great. Chi, for that, that's very good. I think in general, like when we're playing, this is an orchestral piece, and what you want to do is kind of give the impression of what it sounds like to be in the orchestra. And you played it very well, but it was very, very flat. And generally when this is done with the orchestra, and some of this can just be done by, obviously if you get to play it, it's great, but otherwise sometimes it's just a matter of listening to recordings. And generally speaking, in a piece like this, what happens is the Glock player shapes the line. And it's almost like Baroque style in a way, in that you shape the line and do dynamics according to the shape of the line as it goes. So I mean something along the lines of this. I don't know if that comes across on the internet, but you hear I went down as the line goes up. I came down like that and went up. It just kind of gives the line a little tiny bit more interest. Okay, do you want to just try that for me? Okay, that's a lot better. Now, just one little thing going forward. I know there's a lot of confusion in a piece like Pines of Rome, because if you look at the opening of it, it's in 2/8, but the entire 2/8 section from 1 to 2, I don't know why, but it's actually in 3/4. It's written in 2/8, but you'll go and play it with the conductor, and he's going to be coming out, and he's going to be doing that, or she's going to be doing that. It's always done in 3/4. So when you phrase the piece as well, it's a good idea to try and do your phrasing along the lines of the way it will be conducted. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And that just gives you back to the thing. So just try that one more time and think of that 3/4 phrasing.
Okay.
Great, that was so much better. Another little tiny bit of confusion that happens in Pines of Rome is that after this, we start seeing basically alternating sections of 2/8 and 3/8. And it's a real, it doesn't look right, and it was never written in the score, but the way the piece was conceived was that the 3/8 bars and the 2/8 bars match each other. It's beat per bar, not eighth note equals eighth note, or quaver equals quaver. It's the beat of the bar stays the same, and that stays all the way through until number 6. Okay, so do you want to try for us now another bit? I think it's like 6 before number 2.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. It's just try with that, play it a little tiny bit quieter, and make sure that the grace notes that you play are all equal in front of the beat. What they're doing is I'm hearing a lot of different types of grace notes. Try and keep them very, very even before each beat. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, great, Chi. That's very good. Now so most of that was very good. I didn't see exactly how you did it. When you go to the bit where you have the 3-note chords, really the best way of doing that is lead with your outer mallet there. Because when you do that, what you can do is, and then your hand is perfectly in the shape to hit the chord. So just a little tip there makes it easier. The other thing is, I know sometimes this isn't really a class in orchestral preparation for a job or anything, but when you're doing auditions, there's always somebody on a panel who is sitting there taking more note of almost the bars that you're not playing than the bars that you are playing. And a couple of times you didn't count the bars in between your entries clearly. And this is just very, very important to get into the habit. I know when you're under a circumstance like this and there are people watching and you're just counting maybe for 2 seconds and it seems like a half an hour. But it's really important, just count very carefully to come in, and then people know that you have good time. It just gives a good impression of that. Okay? Could you please try from the third measure after 3 for us? Okay, good, good. That's very nice. One little thing just to change there. You kept that nicely in tune. You did a nice subito piano. Watch when you get to the trill at the bottom of the page. It's actually like it would be done really like a piano style when you'll see a trill that's on a high E, and obviously you'll trill with the diatonic note up, which is F sharp. What I would do there's a lot of interesting melodic material going on there in the orchestra. And if you're playing a Glockenspiel, double F as this says, at that point, you're going to cover a lot of the woodwinds up especially. So what normally I do there is don't do too fast. Imagine it's a keyboard player playing it. And then after 2 bars, bring that down. Just do a diminuendo. Believe me, people will hear it. And then just do a bit of a crescendo, maybe 2 bars before 5, just to come out of it. Okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Great. I know I want to keep moving here to get back onto the marimba in a minute, but could you just show us how you're going to be doing the vivace at the very end, at number 8?
Okay.
Okay, good. That's good. Just one little thing. We're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, but one little tiny thing at the end. You have, what we have there are these grace notes, and that alternates for 8 times. What I would suggest doing is play the trill shorter, and then make sure you re-attack the rhythmic notes very, very strongly. So leave a tiny bit of a gap, otherwise it becomes a tiny bit of a racket. It'll just be like too much sound. So what I mean is something like this. And I'm just trying to play the trill, the hall and the sound will kind of fill by itself, and then re-attack the rhythm going down. Okay?
Yes.
Do you want to go over to the marimba?
Okay.
Great. Just while Chi is getting ready to play, just wanted to. This is a piece called the Itsuki Fantasy for 6 Mallets by Kikowabi, who is almost everybody's favorite marimba player. Certainly, she is mine, and she was responsible for a lot of the innovations that we think about now that are taken for granted basically by players nowadays. And Kikowabi, she's still playing great. I think she's in her mid-80s now. She's still going strong, amazing woman. One of her innovations was 6 mallet playing. Now, normally you'll see players playing with two. And then it became this big thing back, in the 60s. People started playing more with two mallets in each hand. What Kikowabi has started to do in a lot of her pieces is using 3 mallets in each hand, and it makes it for like 6 mallet playing. And this is something a lot of people don't either see or don't do. I've been working with Chi on this a bit at the Academy this year. Basically, you're thinking about something like a cross grip, which would be like the Burton grip, which you cross underneath with a stick, like that. And then you cross again underneath, like that. And that gives you your 3 mallets in each hand. You are slightly limited in what you can do, but it's very effective for certain effects. And the main effect it's used for is what we would call chord planing, where you have it set and you play a chord like C major. And because the chords are fixed, you can do it. It works very well. You can do G. You can also go chromatically. Down. Generally speaking, the fast movements are done with a fixed grip, and then they can be changed. And then what you can do to play single lines is like the Burton grip, clip them both over. You can move this stick, and those hardly move. So it's kind of it's an interesting thing. Chi has a great little innovation she does with, she actually has a little rubber band she uses that holds it together really well for her. So why don't you play the piece for us, and let's enjoy this, okay? That was fantastic. How do you feel about that? Were you happy with that, Chi?
Yes, I'm happy with this piece.
Yeah, it's very good. I know we have actually worked on this, so I have a few just a few comments you might change a little tiny bit. Um, I just, there's a few sections I think you could pull apart. You could pull around rhythmically a little bit more. Like I say, it's fantastic playing. One thing I meant would be, so for instance, on the fourth line down, measures 15, 16, 17.
Yes.
I think you could be a little tiny bit more dramatic there. In those three measures, you have sort of that, sort of almost the pentatonic bit you're doing with all the six mallets together, and then the subito piano didn't go down. I know you can bring that down further, and then that'll give you more room to go up to the sforzando in the next bar. And also, I think you could do a bigger ritardando as well before 18, just to make it a little more dramatic, because I just felt your dynamics were a little compressed. Beyond that, you know, it was beautifully played, just a little compressed on the dynamics, and I would pull the rit out a little bit more. So you just want to, would you try that for us, please, from like 15 up to 18?
Yeah.
Good. That's much better. I think you can almost, just as much as you want to pull that out there, because it's really the first time in the piece you're able to do anything kind of dramatic. So I'd even pull that out a little tiny bit more. And then the next little section after this, where you have the 5/8 bars with the and the low register where the notes are bracketed.
Yeah.
You did it very well when it comes back at the end of the piece. But I think here again, I would go out of tempo there a little tiny bit more on the lower notes. And then when the sort of the counterpoint comes back in, go back into tempo a little bit more there. I know it kind of says, it says tempo, but I think you could fool around with that kind of bum, 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 and then back in tempo. That alternates a few times. Okay? Do you want to just try that again from 18, please? Okay, great. So that's all really nice. That it just improves it dramatically. It kind of brings people in a little more. Now, again, this is a very, very small point. When you get to 32, or 22, sorry, 22, the bottom of the page.
Yes.
You're playing at 22, you're still piano, okay? You grew quite a bit louder there by that point. I would try and stay piano. And then there's a tricky bit coming up over the next three bars, because it's all written forte. But you have notes that are unaccented, you have accented notes, you have what we would call tenuto notes with the flat line across the top.
Yeah.
And you also have the dead notes. Could you just play a dead note, like the dead notes for us, just to show us what that is?
Yeah.
Okay, and alternate it with the regular sound.
Yes.
That's it perfectly. So could you just go on from that? What you need to do is try to change how you get the sounds a little bit more, especially I think in the third measure where you have the tenuto in the 3/4.
Yeah.
I think what I'm talking about there is you're playing the other notes, and then maybe when you play the 3/4 with the tenuto, use a little bit more arm weight to try and get slightly heavier, bigger sound, but no louder. Does that make sense?
Yes, I can
Okay,
understand.
just try that and see if that works. So it's basically normal playing, accents, and then like a little more of your sort of weight of your arm to get those 3/4 bars. No quieter or louder, and then alternate the dead strokes with the live strokes all at the same dynamic. It's quite a lot of information to get sort of as one line, because otherwise it sounded a little bit disjointed, that's all, but it was, it was very good. Okay. Okay, Chi, that was so much better. And I think the same thing we did back in measure 18 would apply here as well in a 31, where you're coming up from the bass. I think I would actually just pull that out of time. You're ba da 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 bum 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 bum. Bring that out of time, and each time you're going into the chords, maybe play out of time a little bit, just to kind of pull it around a little more. Because otherwise it does stay very kind of a bit too straight, I think.
Okay.
Could you try from somewhere around maybe 26, please?
Okay.
That's great, Chi. That's great. And I think we're almost out of time, but I just wanted to, I know you've been working on this a lot. Could you just show us, please, what you're doing in the left hand in measure 46? Just the left hand part. It's sort of a chromatic line going down, but with 3 note chords.
Yes.
Okay, and could you play the right hand part against that?
Yes.
That's great. Now, the as difficult as that is, could you just try, because you can do it perfectly, no perfect. Could you just try and bring the right hand up just a tiny bit, because the left hand is basically just a straight chromatic passage down. The right hand is what is giving you the melody there. And I'm kind of getting lost here in the left. I'm listening to the left hand because it's getting very powerful in the bass, whereas you actually, I think, want to be bringing the right hand out. That's the difficulty here. Could you just try that for us, please?
Yes.
Yeah, just, that's great. I think even, could you just try it one more time? Just, it's great that you've got a lot of power in the left hand, but I think, could you just try and one notch less. The bass notes will naturally sing louder. Just try and a little tiny bit less weight in the left, and then a little bit more in the right, and then this is it for the day. Okay, so could you just try that again last time, maybe from 45, measures 45 and 46, and then start it with a smaller subito. Okay, that's it, and then we're done. Okay, thank you. Chi, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
I know, thank you. I know we're moving on to Dylan next, so thank you very much, and I hope you can listen into the rest of it, and we'll see you at the end.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chi. Well done. Lovely playing.
Thank you so much.
So, folks, thank you again for tuning in this afternoon. We do apologize for the audio at the beginning, particularly of that session. Sometimes when you're dealing with broadcasting things over the internet, even though things are fine in sound check, the gremlins come to work and can cause problems. But we do hope that it didn't spoil your enjoyment of that session. We will move on now, but I would like to remind people to please put questions. If you have any questions for Richard, please do put them into the chat facility of the YouTube channel or Facebook, wherever you are watching. And now I would like to ask our second participant, please, Dylan, if Dylan is there, to switch on his mic and audio. Dylan, you're very, very welcome.
Thanks very much.
Dylan is a 21-year-old percussionist from Waterford. He's studying. Sorry. Dylan is a 21-year-old percussionist from Waterford, studying in the Cork School of Music with Stephen Kelly. He's currently a percussionist in the band of the 1st Brigade, Irish Defence Forces, and he has been lucky enough to perform in such venues as Carnegie Hall in New York and the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, along with others. Dylan, you're very, very welcome. Thank you for being with us today, and we hope you enjoy the session.
Thanks very much, Nigel. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
Richard, I'm going to leave you and Dylan the session, and we will see you shortly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Richard.
Hey, Dylan, how you doing? You keeping well?
Good. Yeah,
Good?
very good. Excited.
You didn't have to get the uniform on today.
No, not today.
Very good. See, I think Ronan's in the barracks. He had to shave and everything, so
I know.
you got lucky. That's great. I thought today maybe we'll start with the Harianos. I know you were doing the bit of the xylophone there, and then we can go on. I know you're doing a little bit of ragtime at the end, so we just talk about, because they're very different pieces. I know you're doing them both on the xylophone, but one is sort of ragtime style, which is very different than doing anything sort of orchestral.
Yeah.
So let's just see how you get on with Harianos.
Okay. Move this chair.
Okay, great. Could you just play it slower for me so I can see you're sticking a little bit more carefully?
No problem.
Okay, good. So you have the basic idea. That is the idea with the stick. Your sticking is correct. It's very good, because when you're doing the grace notes, going like that, you always want to be leading with the right down there, because if you try and do the double left, obviously you won't get the grace notes in time. Now, the tricky thing here is people sometimes think that when they play this as an excerpt for an audition, that you have a bit of flexibility about how you're going to do things. The problem is you have no flexibility, because you're playing this with a Glock player.
Yeah.
And if it's out of time at all, it's just kind of a disaster. It's almost exactly the opposite, sort of, when we play solos and we're saying, oh, why don't we pull this around and let's just try something here. This is actually played very, very straight. Again, because there's nothing worse than trying to play two tuned percussion instruments together. Because you know what happens, it's just blink, 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 and we're always wrong, as you know. So a little exercise you can try for this is play the rhythm of the melody once, just by itself. And just think, that's the sound you want. Just try again, that's the sound you want to hear. Okay, and then from there, you want to add grace notes to it without distorting that melody. Okay? So just try that. Try that without the grace notes and then with the grace notes. Okay, just try it again. Okay, so that's sometimes, you know, and that kind of goes a lot of times. I mean, I know this is a tuned percussion masterclass, but that's one of those things like, when we're even practicing snare drum solo, anything we do, if there's a lot of grace notes, the grace notes are just ornaments. Okay, it's like, it's your Christmas tree that you hang ornaments onto, it's earrings, whatever. It's not the important thing. It's an ornament to make something more attractive generally. And just there, for instance, you really should be always able to play what the bass rhythm is.
Yeah.
So that when you add things to it, it's going to be much more in time. So I would work on that as a first step here. Get that really solid. Okay, so just try it one more time.
Just
Okay,
that last bit.
that's really close. That's great. That's just an idea.
Yeah.
And then this is one of those ones where really put it with a metronome. Try and add the grace notes to it, but keep that really strict time going. So you can always hear this. And what I'm trying to do there is always hear the bum, bum, and then play all the grace notes about maybe one dynamic down from the melody. So it's funny. It's one of these little things why I've played this on a bunch of auditions. I've been on panels with it, and it's amazing how it trips people up, even though it's very short. Okay,
Yeah.
so try it with the grace notes this time at a moderate tempo, then we'll try to bring the tempo up a little bit. Okay. One little thing to try there as well is you are rushing the upbeat a little tiny bit. I think what's happening there is that you are playing the upbeat, the low B flat, a tiny bit early to give yourself a little more time to fit the grace note in. And that's what I meant about kind of like distorting the rhythm of the piece. You got to hear this. Like that. Try to keep that very, very clear. Okay?
I might just stop for a second, Richard. I'm just going to grab some headphones. I'll be 2 seconds.
Oh, that's all right. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, Richard. We just we're getting an echo on the line. So we think if Dylan sticks on a pair of headphones, it's going to cut that out.
I
So
think so.
apologies for the interruption.
No. We're this. I've never been felt so helpless sometimes in the last year when you're at the mercy of technology.
I know, and things that sound fine during sound check suddenly cause problems when you're live. Okay,
Oh,
thank you very much, Dylan. Let's proceed and
No
we'll see
problem.
if that sorted that out. Okay, thank you.
Okay, it should be good now, I think.
that's better.
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, we'll get your picture back here. No, I know the thing playing with headphones on for hours it's not ideal, but it's one of those things we just kind of have to do quite a bit. Have you started your video up? I can't see you yet.
Yeah, no, it should be there.
Oh, you're there. Okay, perfect. So let's just try this and then we'll move on. But really try. Don't. It's like it's one of these things. It's a little tricky to just. You've got to wait. It's just wait. It's like a bravery thing. You just have to wait and fit the other thing in time, because when you get to the real tempo of the piece, which is sort of a it's actually quite bright, and if you start distorting it when it's young, when it's slower, that won't happen. So I know you can do it. Like, you've got good hands. I can see that. So just try it one last time, then we'll move on to the next section.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the rough idea. What I basically do is just take it down slower and just work that to make sure that that melody line is really in time. It's still a little tiny bit out of time there, okay? Great. Let's go on to the next little bit that gets asked at number 7.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. I know it's marked fortissimo. Okay, I know I've played this in the orchestra many times. It's funny when you get to this bit though. It's very playful.
Yeah.
It almost sounds sort of, or it sounds quite oriental to me as well, because it does go into kind of a pentatonic scale. Strangely enough, there's other bits where he mixes minor and major and different things at the same time. Here he seems to throw in a little tiny bit of pentatonic scale. And what I would do there is, imagine you're doing an audition for something, and you just play it flat, a note perfect, and 10 other people do that. What is special about that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's kind
you need
of
to bring
like,
something to the
so
table, isn't it?
we all need to bring something to things. And I generally say, I try, like what we talked about with She a little bit at the beginning in Pines of Rome. I try to never play anything really flat. Obviously, if it's bolero or something, yeah, you have to be a little bit machine-like. But generally speaking, try to put a shape on the line. It can be very subtle, but it makes things a lot more interesting. Even here, I know there's not a huge range on it because it only kind of goes around an octave. But if you kind of did something like that, do you hear? I'm exaggerating it a bit, but I'm trying to make the line shaped a little bit. There was one of my teachers I took a few lessons with in the States. I mean, my main teacher was Morris Lang, who's like my mentor and good friend now, but I took some lessons with a guy named Buster Bailey, who also is in the New York Philharmonic. And that was one thing I remember he always stressed: never play a flat line. It was, everything had a shape to it. Everything is going somewhere, and everything is you're either going towards something or you're going away from something. He says this applies to life as well. Now, I was like 22 years old, and I was like, I just want to play drums. I didn't really get it, but I do now. Everything has that. So try to put a bit of a curve on that. Okay, so just try it again. That's along the idea. You'll get that smoother. I know I'm putting you on the spot, and there's a camera looking at you, and you're going, oh, what's going on? No, that's great. Just try and do things like that.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah, and you thing is, you never know, like when you're going for a job or something. What happens is a lot of times somebody just asks you a question. They just say, "Oh, could you try doing it this way?" And
Yeah.
they're not doing that out of maliciousness or anything. A lot of times that's when somebody's interested in your playing and they want to see, is this person flexible enough to change a little bit? So, and they want to see, do you handle yourself well when you're asked to do that? So there's a lot of little things to come into it, okay?
Yeah.
I know to finish up on this one, last thing, could we just try the very end with when we get to number 10? Okay, that's good. Again, you're rushing it a little bit.
Okay.
Just make sure all that's happening in this section is this is one of these things where it's almost a major, it's like the first line, it's pentatonic or a minor feel, and then it brightens into a major. It kind of goes back and forth. So could I see how you're doing the grace note on the end when you're doing the B flat? What kind of a grace note are you doing there?
Left, right, left on the C. So, or sorry, no. So right, left, right. Just 3 notes. Da-da-da.
On the starting on the B flat.
On the B flat, and then
okay,
so B flat,
that's correct. Now, that is one of two things. It's actually I've always done that. That is what's called an inverted. It's still early for me. An inverted mordent.
Okay.
How's that for my Baroque terminology?
Yeah.
Where you come down. Make sure when you start that you're exactly on the beat. Again, I think da 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 ya. You were almost. It sounded a little tiny grace notey that you were starting it a little tiny bit early. So make sure you come down with that. Okay. You want to just try that one more time? Great. And the last thing is, I was at one audition where they were asking people to have this prepared a different way, and what it's called is another sort of a Baroque ornamentation term called I think it's called a double turn, but it could be an inverted double turn, where basically you play 2 mordents, inverted mordents at the same time, and a lot of people, some players, I've heard people do it. It gives a little more effect to it because you're playing twice as many notes. So it's like the actual thing in the part, the notation, could be interpreted both ways. I think it's an inverted mordent, but some people play it as a double turn an inverted double turn. So that would sound like this. Gives a little tiny bit more kind of oomph to the last note. That's a technical term for the day. So it's just instead of the mordent. Do you want to just give that a try? it's one of those things. Be prepared. Have it your
Yeah.
favorite way, but be prepared and do research and know what can be asked, because you don't want a job to go by, for instance, where it falls on a little thing like that. These are just small things. Great. You have some ragtime for us, I believe.
Yeah, the George Hamilton Green. Log Cabin
Great.
Blues.
We've got a few minutes. I just wanted to. I might stop you some way by having
Yeah.
suggestions, but let's just. I'd say maybe don't. Is there a repeat there? You probably don't do the repeat.
Okay.
Probably just go the second time bars on this if you can. Fantastic, great job, great job. When you're thinking, I love the piece. It's great. Okay.
Fun.
When you're thinking of, say, playing a solo on xylophone, like a ragtime solo, as opposed to like sort of an orchestral thing, which we just did, what are you kind of thinking about? How do you approach it? Do you use the exact same technique? Do you hit the instrument the same way? What are you thinking there?
I suppose, I don't know, when you're playing with an orchestra, you kind of have to be, like you said, at the start, you don't have to be as strict with the time, I think. You can push and pull it a little bit, and then maybe you can do more with the dynamics when you're playing solo, you know?
That's one way of putting it. I think what I was talking about a little bit was, and I think what's interesting about the class we're doing today was I was kind of dreading if everyone just said, let's just play marimba for 2.5 hours, because I think it's really interesting to have, like, we've already had marimba, xylophone, and glockenspiel, and I think there's some vibes later, and it's great to show the different ideas. Do you know, when you're playing something that's orchestral, generally speaking, what you're having to do is think about cutting through. I think, not literally cutting through, but like having to be heard clearly through anywhere up to, say, 100 people. And generally, the solos are very, very prominent. They may not be very long, but they're usually very important and prominent. So generally, when we play the orchestral stuff, we tend to kind of punch into the notes a little bit. It can be, and I'm always thinking there very much playing straight down, straight into the note to get a lot of power. Now it's one of these things where you see a lot of ragtime players that are ragtime specialists, and their hands look completely different than an orchestral player. we tend to play, well, I tend to play more straight down from the wrist. This does my vertical and this does the horizontal. To be a really successful ragtime xylophone player, you really need to have sort of a little bit more sideways flexibility. And I just think that is something you could work on a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm noticing when you're going from places, your hands are going a little stiff. You're smiling, but
Yeah, definitely.
you're probably thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it can be tricky, you know.
It is tricky. Excuse me. So what we can do about that is, I would simply take some exercises. Do you have, now this, I'm not, believe me, this isn't product placement. There's 2 books that would really, I think, help you. Do you have the George Hamilton Green 50 Lessons?
Yeah, I have that one.
That's very good. And what I would do is, what happens is everyone gets very impatient. And
Yeah.
after 2 weeks, they're on the 3rd lesson.
Yeah, it takes a long time, I think, to progress, you know.
What I do is I just go to lesson 1 and look at the first exercise and just play it. Don't do it. I know it's I think it's just in C.
Yeah, up
And
and down
just-
kind of type thing.
Just play it in all 12 keys major. Then do it in all 12 keys minor, going through maybe the circle of fourths. And these things, they all build. One of them is just that, and then the next one. Something like that, if I can remember. And each one kind of builds and spreads you around the instrument a little more interestingly. Okay? That one's really good. There's some of the things. The other book is Mental and Manual Calisthenics for the Modern Mallet Player.
I've never heard of that.
By Buster Bailey. That has a lot of, the book has a lot of swingy kind of stuff in it. There's one exercise that basically I make a lot of my students do. They hate it. But it's basically, it's doing exercises and then having to do all 12 keys. So it's that type of thing. Do you see how when I play that, if you can see, wrists are having to, I'm having to actually, there's no way of playing that stiffly. If you did, you couldn't do it. So
Yeah.
it kind of forces you into what you need to do a little tiny bit more. And that would be the main thing I said. Sometimes I think you were trying to play rhythmically and you changed, but I think, it's very good. I'm very impressed. Great playing. Say just a few little tips to work on. I say you're obviously heading in the right direction. It's great you have a job. These are gold dust in these hard times for musicians. But I say, that's great. I think we're supposed to take a break now on the show. So I think Nigel will be appearing any second now. But,
Here I am.
There he is. He appeared.
I did. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Richard. Great playing and love your insights as always, Richard. Thank you. You're quite correct. We're going to take a very short break, just about 3 minutes. So if you are watching the masterclass, please don't go far and do come back. And we will be back with you in about 3 minutes with our next 2 participants. And don't forget to keep any questions you have coming in on YouTube and Facebook pages. Great. So folks, if Richard, Dylan, if you could switch off your mics and audio, and we will see you back in about 3 minutes. Thank you. Well, hello everybody, and you're very welcome back to the second half of this afternoon's masterclass, which is a masterclass in tuned percussion with Richard O'Donnell, the Royal Irish Academy of Music, National Symphony Orchestra. We will have two more participants this afternoon, followed by a short Q&A session, so please put any questions that you might have for Richard in the chat boxes of our YouTube channel or our comments section of the YouTube channel and Facebook pages. So we now are very happy to welcome John Russo. John, you're very welcome. John is a master's student at the TU Dublin Conservatory and he's often performed with the RTE Concert Orchestra, the Dublin Concert Orchestra, Orchestra of Ireland, Wexford Festival Opera Orchestra, and the RTE National Symphony Orchestra. As a soloist, John was a finalist in the 2018 Freemasons Young Musician of the Year and was named one of the University Concert Hall's Rising Stars in 2020. Recently, John accepted a scholarship to study on orchestral artistry masters at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, while also being proudly supported by a Jones Engineering Financial Award. John, you're very welcome. Thank you for being with us this afternoon, and we hope you enjoy the session. Richard, I'll leave John with you, and I'll see you in about half an hour.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Richard.
Hey, John, you there? How's everything going?
Quite well. Doing okay.
Yeah, locked in. Are you back at school yet, or are you just are you all at home now?
I'm practicing all at home.
Well, it looks like you have a nice setup there. That's great.
I do. It's very nice here.
Very
Thanks.
good. So I think you picked three pieces of orchestral repertoire to do today.
Yes.
One of them is. I take it you have a Glockenspiel, so Sorcerer's Apprentice looks like a likely first one.
Mm-hmm.
Again, think about the similarities between this and Pines of Rome. Now, they weren't vastly different composers from different countries, written years apart, but they have a very one similarity, both written for a keyboard Glockenspiel. I've come across them, very rarely used because generally speaking, they don't have the volume needed to play with a modern symphony orchestra. And we wouldn't get to play some of these great parts unless you were a great keyboard player as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind with it. Again, it is a thing. Very few of the early Glockenspiel parts were actually written for the instrument you're standing in front of. All your Daphnis and Cloy, almost all the Ravel parts, the Debussy, Dukas, so many of the parts were written with a different instrument in mind, which can cause a few problems, which maybe we'll talk about, or maybe you don't have. So we'll see. Okay, so there's four little things I wanted to talk about in this. You have the opening little solo.
Mm-hmm.
We have the waterfall solo. Then there's another little tiny bit towards the end after 40, which we'll look at. And then the
Okay.
finale, which is just after 52. Now, a couple of these
Sure.
sections are difficult because they were really, really made for a person playing with a hand on a keyboard without actually having to move the hand. You could almost keep in the same position and play this incredibly complex thing without looking at the instrument. On the Glockenspiel, we're having to move all over the place, plus keeping our eyes on it. So it's a vastly different challenge. Okay, so let's just go through those 4 bits in order because I think it's worthwhile. Could we hear your opening solo, please? Okay, great. Could you show me? I was getting a bit of buffering here on the film. Could you show me your sticking for the last little bit, the runs up?
Yep.
Okay, that's good. One thing I'd suggest there is just try and crescendo them each a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So, just an overall thing, there's a few things to work on, but the overall thing is don't get too loud too soon.
Okay.
It's all quite light, and then it is a big sort of a big crescendo, but at the end, save some at the end. I always say it's like this thing where, quiet versus loud. I was always really scared when I was a kid. If, my dad said, get in the room now. I know what you did, or something. And you'd be like, when he spoke quietly, I knew there was trouble, but I also knew that's when you have to listen.
Yeah.
The quiet music draws people in. Obviously, the loud stuff is exciting, but if it's all loud, it's not exciting anymore. So try to hold back a little bit more. So that'd be one little thing. Another is the grace notes. Again, and my compliments. You play it well. Seriously, you play it. It's really nice.
Thank you.
From a fussiness point of view, and when we're, as orchestral players, and I know, I've met you, and I know, you'd like to have a job in an orchestra someday and things, and you go to an audition, there's 30 or 40 people playing the same piece, and 20 of them all play it note perfect.
Mm-hmm.
What are we bringing to the table?
Mm-hmm.
I know myself, I was very nervous about doing auditions for the first time, especially since my teacher said, oh, look, just play it like you're playing the piece, forget what's on the page. And to a certain extent, I've won 5 different jobs, but that's one way I did it. I didn't worry so much about playing things perfectly. I worried about trying to play the music while looking at the fussiness of certain details. So here, a little detail I would look at a little more carefully are your grace notes.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of variations in the grace notes. So for instance, at the top, if you went, I'm really trying to make the grace notes all the same distance. Now, I just want to hear on your part, when you played I'm trying to hear, I might have misheard. In measure after 17.
Yeah.
The line after 17.
Yes.
Did you play a D flat or a D natural grace note before the C?
Great question. To be honest, actually, I think I might have played a D flat.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is the kind of thing that shows what a nerd I am. That how can I hear it? How can I hear a D flat on a Glockenspiel? Maybe it's sad. I don't know. But yeah, watch that there. That is the one note there, for instance. That I think you missed a note completely at one point, but never be very, very careful about learning a wrong note. You're a very technically accomplished player for your age. And it's one of these tricky things as we kind of go out into the professional world that you don't want to be in a position where you're playing something incorrect and have it pointed out to you. We all make mistakes, believe me.
Yes.
Have I made mistakes? Yes. Many, many. But so watch that. I noticed there was a note there. So that'd be my main thing there is watch that when you're coming down.
Mm-hmm.
You did. And you hear there's a real clang when you did that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Play most of that section quite quietly. I'd probably only go up to maybe mezzo piano by the time, and then for this sort of second half, that's where I would save. I'd save all the kind of, power for the end, and then at the end, make sure there's a little tiny bit for those last little runs, which are very kind of I know it's real brilliant orchestral writing. Do real fast Glock writing going up is very exciting. Okay, so you want to just try the whole thing again, and then we'll move on.
Sure. I'll try iron out that D
Look,
flat.
hey, we're all friends. Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a few things to work on there, but you're on the right track.
Yeah.
Okay, there's always something to work on. It's the beauty of percussion. Like I'm standing in a room full of equipment that I'm not going to live long enough to learn how to play everything the way I'd like to. But that's the challenge of it, is that you can, keep going at it. So the next little bit, sort of the waterfall we call it, at 22. Now, one little thing here you can, what time signatures is Sorcerer's Apprentice in?
3/8.
What's the real time signature?
1 in
No.
1, I suppose.
No,
No, I don't know then.
it's in 9/8.
9/8.
I know. Of course it says 3/8. I'm wrong. But the last number of times I've played it, I've never played it with a conductor who's conducted it in 1. It's always conducted in 3. Because except for one little bit as the piece goes on, there's one bit where it changes. It's almost all phrased in groups of 3. And I even have, I think the New York Philharmonic have a set of parts in 9/8 that were copied out for them. Because it's really easy. When you go 1, 2, 3, it's 1, 2, 3, and people are counting all these huge numbers. But the fact that the piece is phrased in 3 can also affect how you play. Even that opening bit. Yeah, it's all 3. This waterfall section is the same thing. Sometimes the way you can make it sound kind of special is think 1, 2, 3, because it's all phrased that way. You might think playing it lighter than you think, but maybe with a slight, almost like tenuto accent at the beginning of each 3 bars. Just to give it that nice 3 phrase. That can give it something a little special, maybe make you stand out a little bit. Okay? Okay, good. So you obviously know all the notes really well. You miss, everybody misses stuff in this. But again, just try for me now. I'm just going to show, just like if you're doing this. One, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I was exaggerating a little bit, but try to get that phrasing in a little bit. Just try that for me. Okay, so that's good. So most of the phrasing is very good. Now, what you can try there as well is, I liked that better. Again, you don't want it to be, you don't want it to be kind of like over the top, because, things can sound a bit, tacky or something if you go too far. But it's just showing a little bit of artistry on the Glockenspiel. It's something we fight against, but like I try so hard to think about these things. How do you make something sound like a real artistic addition to the orchestra when you're playing? It's not just playing the notes. There's loads of people who can play fast. There's always going to be somebody who can play faster than you or I. But you can, if you work on your musicianship above all, Now, one other little thing I think you could try for me is, do you see the last trill?
Yes, yeah.
Could you just now, could you play it very slowly for me so I can see what you're doing?
Sure.
Okay, so you're doing the A flat to B flat,
Yes.
and then resolving onto an A.
Yes.
That's perfect. Okay, so that's what you want to do now. The problem is, because this was written obviously on a keyboard Glockenspiel, it was much cleaner. And we're doing things on a regular Glockenspiel, and we're getting sort of a... We're playing 3 notes in a cluster.
Sure.
And that is the impression of what I get coming out of you.
Yes.
A
Yeah.
little tiny bit there. Now, what we can do about that, what I always do anyway, is when exactly the same as, yeah, it's weird because there's a parallel to Pines of Rome, where there's a long section on the E natural and F. Again, another keyboard trill. If you see that on the note, always trill on the diatonic note above it. That gives you your thing. Think about a keyboard player. How fast would they trill? So don't go ridiculous. We can trill faster than the keyboard player. So,
Yeah.
but what's that doing? That's not being stylistic.
Mm-hmm.
But also on a Glockenspiel, when you do that, when we do this sound, it's, you know, I've heard it very despairingly described as almost like an alarm clock. What is happening to a lot of the interesting melodic material around us when we do that? It's obviously disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do with that little section is I play the first measure, but I basically start it and I fall off of it very quickly. And the entire second measure, I'm playing very quiet. I do a slight crescendo, and then I think really importantly, I stop a little tiny bit early to do the resolution onto the A. Because think, you've been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Think that doesn't resolve to me. So what I do is this. 1, 2, 3, something like that. And then I play the resolution at the end very, very clearly.
Sure.
So it stands out of the trill. Do you want to just try that for me? It could just be this, something like that.
Sure.
You don't want it to be too much, but ba-da-dum, and then there's a real resolution to it. I've done this, never had anybody say anything to me.
Sure.
Because it's clear, it's kind of like what other people are doing. So
Yes.
that would be one little thing here. Now, 2 more things in this, and we'll try to get on to something else. If you look at 40.
Yeah.
Now, this is this is one of these things. There's I won't say it's a misprint. It's a print in the part that has changed over the years. We did a CD recording of this in the symphony, and obviously we got the original parts in, and they were slightly different than this. If you look there, do you see where you have that?
Yeah.
Now, in the original version of this, they're in C major, the next entry is in D major.
Yes.
So you're playing it, it's like a 5/1 cadence, a D chord to a G chord. So the first one you're doing a C chord to an F, and the next one you're doing a D to a G. And he does, instead of this one, he goes, but in this part that I gave you, which is given out half the time. Now, the reason I'm playing it down an octave so we can hear it better, but the reason they do that is a lot of Glockenspiels up until the last few years, they stopped at a C on the top.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody could play the part. So there was actually parts printed that changed what Dukas wrote because of the limitations of an instrument. So instead of getting this, you got just a slight change. Just be aware it can happen. If play it the way it's written on it, and you have a top C on your instrument, I think you have a C there. You can play,
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of, there you just go. You can actually play the part, or otherwise you can't play the part.
Yes.
Don't worry about that. Last thing is here, I wanted just to talk to you about the bit after 52.
Sorry, yeah.
And this is like the little, this is sort of the core, this is like the two little sort of broken chord progressions, and this is one of those great ones where on a keyboard you plop your hand down in one place and just do that, and it actually plays really easy. And on a Glockenspiel, I think it's one of the most challenging little bits in the piece to get right. Okay, so could you just try that for me, please?
Sure. No worries. I didn't prepare this bit, but I could give it a shot.
Oh yeah. Okay, that's the idea. Yeah, the sticking you did is correct. It's always it's the double rights you do at the end.
Yeah.
On the thing. No, that's all correct. What it is that, again, and this is just a tip. Is like for today, everybody's happy today. On auditions, when you get sent a part, generally speaking, this is an important one to have prepared. Yes. I did this at an audition, and I played the opening one and this one. And I must have spent I can't know how many hours I spent getting the middle part ready. And the end part I didn't spend much time on. Now I knew it, but it's one of those things where the opening, that little, the waterfall, and this bit at the end is actually just as hard. It doesn't get advertised, but it gets asked all the time. What you do with this is basically it's like right, and then the exact same thing up a step.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. So it goes up with the rests. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's one of those things that it's incredibly awkward, but doesn't get asked too often.
Yes.
Okay. So I know you've got to do. Let's lose the Glockenspiel quick and get a little xylophone happening.
Yeah.
You're gonna look like the very quick move here. That's a great great xylophone to have for your bedroom. It's ideal.
There we go.
Great stuff. This is one of these things we deal with as professionals. Like, I'm lucky I have a studio at home, but it's really hard when you're starting and you've got all this equipment and you're forced into an ever smaller corner of a bedroom. And it gets very tricky. So with you have a few pages of the Firebird when we've got that up next. There's a couple little things in this we could talk about really quick. Do you have the bit at 47 ready?
I did. So I did the crotchet equals 152, but I can play through 47, I suppose.
Just play through it very quickly. Just play. great. That's very, very great, attempt to it. Main thing in this is this bit here can sound like just dead if you don't feel the time. When you're doing this, the conductor is going to be doing this. They're almost like they're giving you kind of a bouncing tempo in 6. And don't forget, it's a ballet, so most of the tempos are actually very alive compared to some other types of music. The tempo really bounces. Now, one thing you can do this, again, to give it a little bit of shape, is when you come out the bit there at 47, and you're going 3. Put a little crescendo at the end of that, and then bring it down. It's generally speaking, it's not written, but the number of times I've played this, that people have just done it. So I just kind of went with it, and I started listening to a bunch of recordings, and it's just really common. So you don't want to be the only person playing flat because people will go phrase with everyone else. It is a little solo there, so just bring that up. We will finish with your fast bit. Just one little section. Do you see the bit at 13 that's in the Dance Infernal?
I'll have to get that up on the laptop.
Oh, never mind. Never mind, because we'll take time. Go back to the bit. You have the bit at 127 ready?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. The only thing I wanted to say about there's a little bit in the dance that prepared. There's one little thing. It looks like a glissando. And you should have it prepared 3 ways because I've seen it. You'll see it's after this bit where there's a 2, 3. Now, right there's a gliss that goes for 1 measure. I've been asked to play it 3 different ways professionally. It's just a gliss from an E to an E.
Yeah.
But I had one conductor say, could you just play that as a Phrygian scale for 1 octave? So it's 1, 2, 3. So you're going to play a super fast solo. And then another conductor said, oh, could you gliss that? But play it a bit late to give effect. So you're going 1. And I had another conductor say, oh, gliss that over 2 octaves. It's sort of the same thing, but again, it just shows be flexible enough to change these things. Okay, so we have a minute. Let's just start off at 127, where you are, and let's just hear how they hear that.
Sure.
Okay, John, that's great. Now, so I like your dynamics at the top and all. That's very good. One little thing you could do again, sometimes I don't want to be the broken, keep saying the same thing. Watch your counting in between your entries. When you're doing that, again, you're playing it. You go, I played it note perfect, but I was being very careful counting it, and a couple of the entries were a tiny bit early, and a couple were a tiny bit late. Okay.
Sure.
Just last thing we do today is just something along these lines where you go 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Just like that, really, really fast. Okay.
Sure.
John, I don't know where the half hour went. It went very fast.
Yeah, it did. No, I learned a lot. Yeah.
But it was worthwhile. It was really, really good. You're doing great. Great future ahead of you, I'm sure. Okay.
Thank you, Richard.
So, thank you very much, and I think we're on to Ronan soon. So look, thank you very much, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
You too, Richard. All the best.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Richard. Again, really enjoyed that session, so thank you. We're coming up to our third and final participant here. And this is Ronan Scarlett. And just before I introduce Ronan, I'd like to remind people that we will have a short Q&A session in about half an hour, so approximately 4:30. So if you have any questions for Richard, please do put them into the comment sections of our YouTube channel or Facebook page, wherever you're watching the masterclass. So we will proceed with Ronan. Ronan started studying percussion at the age of 7 with Monica Bonney, and later with Richard at the Royal Irish Academy of Music. He's currently a member of the Defence Forces School of Music, and he's in his final year of the master's degree at the Royal Irish Academy. He's performed with various orchestras and ensembles, such as the National Symphony Orchestra of Ireland, the Irish Chamber Orchestra, the Irish Baroque Orchestra, and Crash Ensemble. So, Ronan, you're very, very welcome, and coming to us from the barracks in Rathmines, is that right? You're muted, Ronan, there. Just sorry, if you could unmute yourself.
How you doing? Yeah, coming here from Cottlebrew Barracks.
Cottlebrew Barracks. Good. You're very, very welcome. I'll see you in about half an hour. And Richard, Ronan, I'll leave you to the session.
Okay, thanks a lot, Nigel.
Hi, how are things, Richard?
Hey, Ronan. I say, very smart in the uniform.
Thank you.
I guess they don't let you get away with anything else.
No, they've been very kind here in the army, especially Colonel Armstrong and Commandant Bannister. So just want to thank
Absolutely.
them.
No, I was speaking to them as well, and they're very, very accommodating. And I know they've been fantastic about sort of allowing you to have time off to study. And I know even with like the the Defense Forces, the Army School of Music, this is one of those things where a lot of people don't realize, but for wind, brass, and percussionists in Ireland, the Army is the major employer. It's where there are more jobs in the Army for wind, brass, and percussion players than there are in all the orchestras, north and south, including the Garda Band. So, it's really, really important aspect musically for the country. So, again, I'm always very grateful for all that they do. So great. So I think you have is it Porgy and Bess for us?
That's right, I'm xylophone.
And then okay, well, then we'll talk about the other piece, because I think the other thing you have is very cool as well. So great. Let's hear Porgy and Bess and say every percussionist loves playing this in front of people. You're good. You're great. It's gonna be great. Fantastic.
Sorry, take two.
Great job, Ronan. Great job. It's very hard. It is hard. There's just there's no way around that, and it's why when you see an orchestral audition, it's usually, if not always, the first thing that goes down on the list, because it's one of the it's an early xylophone part from the early 1930s, but it still has a lot of challenges. And just maybe before we do it, there's a couple of little things, there's a couple of challenges that are in it that are kind of interesting to do with sticking, because it has this in it. There's a few different ways of sticking it. Now, I always play it hand to hand. I know you do it the same way I do. But there are two completely other different schools of how Porgy and Bess is played. And I think the fact that I'm actually saying different schools about how a single piece is played, it shows how important a piece it is when we're actually talking about our profession, because it's one of those pieces you either know it or you don't. You have to know it. So one way, the way people do it is they do a lot of double rights. And instead of this, it's most of it's done with the right hand. There's another way that probably some people started using in the 60s and the 70s because players were probably getting more technically proficient. And somebody said, well, why am I doing these big gaps with the right hand when I can just do... And they do the short gaps with the left hand. Now, all three ways are great. The only problem is that both of the other ways, in my opinion, have a top tempo where they just start falling apart a little bit, to me. And though Porgy and Bess is probably paid at something like crotchet 112 would be about correct, sometimes conductors get a little excited. And you don't want them getting too excited and start to go faster than your particular sticking will work. It's one of those things, you know, sometimes, you know, hope there's no conductors listening, but, you know, it's a lot easier to wave your arm at crotchet 112 than it is to play 4 semiquavers for every beat at 112. But imagine you go up, you know, and I've seen this, I've had to play this like at 126. It was way up there. And I was glad I had a method. So what you can do with this, the hand-to-hand sticking is very good in that you can really, you don't have a top tempo, you can really keep turning it up. Okay? So, very good playing, a lot of really good playing. Just when you're thinking about it, if you are thinking about Porgy and Bess, what type of music do you think about? Like, what comes into your mind?
I kind of think like almost ragtime, kind of early jazz, kind of Gershwin. So
Very good. Yeah, it is. It is really ragtime. Jazz really hadn't. You know, the swing era was not quite there when he was writing a lot of this. So it's really a ragtime influenced piece. It's right on that, it's kind of written right around the time when, you know, musical styles were changing drastically. We were going from talking pictures to sound, from silence to talking. There was a lot of change happening. And the ragtime to jazz thing was huge. Now, one thing I noticed a little bit I would change the way you play it. If you listen to any ragtime music, and of course I doubt you go home and listen to ragtime every day, but the accents are quite light. So sometimes when you're playing, you're really... You're pounding them out a little bit. And I think you can actually make it... You want the accents to be there. But you can actually make it easier on yourself by playing it more ragtime style. Play them down a little tiny bit. You want them to be there, but not in your face. Otherwise, you get this relentless thing in your face. So could you just try it from the top? So you don't have to go full speed. Just with slightly lighter accents for us.
sure.
Good. I tried to stop you, but the xylophone.
Sorry.
No, the xylophone. When you're playing loud, the xylophone always wins.
Sorry.
I bow to the xylophone. Dynamically, I can't compete. Yeah, so that's better. So I'd lighten up the grace notes a little bit, and then probably what dynamic are you thinking about to start the piece at?
Well, I suppose you need to blend in with the strings because you don't want to kill them on the dynamics. So, like a mezzo forte forte kind of, I suppose.
Absolutely, yeah. I've heard people say più mezzo forte or poco forte. I'd really like someone to explain the exact definition of those two dynamics to me. But yeah, something a light forte. Again, you are just like, again, people sometimes play this and they pound it out and they think, I got the xylophone solo. But you're accompanying the first violins, basically. You actually listen to a recording on it. Sometimes you hear the xylophone, but it's not that loud. You're just basically you're just doing the first violin part for 30 seconds or something like that. So you want to kind of keep it down, not too heavy, really just something like that, and then really blend with them. Now, generally speaking, I heard you doing it a little tiny bit. I would always say when you're doing your whole section, which is based around the F sharps there, that's a really, really good bass tempo to have. Or dynamic to have, sorry, not tempo. The thing is, again, it's this thing of trying to get away from playing things flat, where we just have this one dynamic. And they say, you were speaking with somebody and you went, hi Ronan, how are you? And you'd be going, I'm fine, I'll see you later. Because, naturally speaking, people speak with lines and stuff, and it would be the same with this. So what I do with this piece, and usually it goes very well with a lot of times the way the strings would phrase naturally, is think of this whole opening section. And then I usually come down there because they're playing and then they drop down, and it's funny, the strings naturally just get quieter there. There's a little tiny bit of a drop, and you don't want to be just pounding it out while they're doing that. So I always go with them. And then the next section tends to, again, goes back to the original, where they're, and it's funny, it's just a matter of, it's how the strings play. So you see da 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 da, and it's the top notes are naturally louder. So you'll just go, brings that out a bit. Then you're back to the bass section again. That all stays the poco forte. Now the next section kind of, again, it goes up a fifth. Where is it? Yeah, here. That little bit there, when it kind of goes around the C sharp section, I generally tend to lift it up half a dynamic because the strings tend to be brighter up there and they play a little harder, so you'll get this. We're going down, so bring the whole dynamic down there to it, and then the next section, basically you'll play it flatter, and then maybe a little tiny bit of a crescendo at the end, just to give it a little something. Okay, so it really is that thing. That way. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but I'm exaggerating it a little bit. But just instead of just playing this like block of music that's relentlessly fast, loud, and a little bit, not you, but I see a lot of people that it's relentlessly fast, loud, and pounding. Where put some shape on the line like that, and then you're bringing a certain artistry to the whole thing. Okay, so why don't you play it a little tiny bit slower? Relax the dynamic a little tiny bit, and let's try to bring some of those dynamics I was just talking about out. Okay?
Sure.
think. What do you think? I think that's night and day different.
Yeah, it definitely it sounds more musical, I suppose, is the word for it. But
It sounds more musical. I mean, again, it's one of these things where sometimes we'll go out and say there's 20 of you in a line, and everybody there's 20 people play, you know, a sort of a fortissimo, fast Porgy and Bess. And what is that? So, you know, by adding, I always say add some shape to the line. This is how I've always approached things. I don't believe in the sort of the pyrotechnics approach where you just play fast and loud. Actually, that's easier. This is something you have to think about each piece. You're going through it sort of measure by measure. Think about who you're playing it with, like the violins in this case, how they naturally play something, phrase it with it, and then a non-percussionist listens to it, and immediately they hear, oh, I'm hearing the piece now. That sounds good.
Yeah.
I like that guy. Maybe let's hear him again. And as a musician, those are really good words. Let's hear him again. Even better words. Let's hire him. So something like that. Okay. Do you want to bring the vibraphone over?
sure. That sound okay?
So, yeah, I know this piece, Portrait of Tracy. Oh, Jaco Pastorius, cool. Do you want to, I see you arranged it. So do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. Yeah, so I can't remember. It was one day last year. I just had it on in the car, and because it's a solo bass piece, but he uses a lot of harmonics and like kind of pinch harmonics and stuff like that. And I don't know what it was, but I just thought, wow, because all the sustain and stuff might sound nice and cool on a vibraphone. So I tried a few things. Obviously, the range isn't the exact same as a bass guitar. You're missing like the low E and stuff, so I had to change a little bit here and there. But I kind of thought it'd be a cool project, and it turned out okay. Now I'll let you guys be the judge.
Well, no, we'd like to hear it. I like the fact that you arranged it, but I think it's kind of it's very cool. I cannot actually think of another solo for vibraphone that was that's a transcription from double bass.
Yeah.
Okay, well, no, cool. So let's hear what you've got with it. I'd love to hear it.
Sure.
it. Nice transcription. Good job.
Thank you.
You know, like looking at it, a couple little things. I noticed you said at the beginning there were some harmonics. Where were the harmonics? Because I see there's a lot of, like, at the top of the piece, you have some pause notes. Would there be something in there?
So yeah, so it starts off, it's actually the very first bar. I think he's playing pinch harmonics for all of that, or it might be harmonics in the frets. And so, because it's a fast passage, I just kind of decided to put it up here.
Okay.
And then the pause notes are just kind of lower bass notes. He actually plays those notes, so. But I have a feeling it's supposed to be down an octave as well.
So is that like the low G flat are actually played?
Yeah, they're played, yeah, and the rest are supposed to be harmonics.
Okay. Could you just try something for me?
Sure.
This is my malicious streak, messing with your nice arrangement. Could you try playing the E natural on the second semiquaver of the third beat? Could you try playing that with the back of a mallet? You know what I mean? Now, up and off. No, it's on the third beat. You go A, E. There, yeah. Could you just try that? So try the opening two beats, and then just something there.
Sure.
Something, yeah, I mean, I think you could make that slicker than that, but I know the thing, I remember, like, yeah, I mean, I remember seeing Jaco Pastorius play once when I lived in New York City, and yeah, the whole thing with the harmonics and everything was insane. You know, he's an amazing player.
Yeah.
But it might be nice somewhere in there to do something like that. Like either with just the little back of a mallet, something like that. That would kind of give that effect. I think I'd play it a lot quieter than you did. Something like that.
Sure. I
try it one
worked
more
a little
time.
bit on. Yeah, I kind of found out as well if striking the node point.
Yeah, maybe try that as well. Try a couple things. I think just incorporate that because it would. I mean, obviously, you know, the idiomatic qualities of a double bass, which I know the concert hall put a great masterclass for double bass on, and like but you know, the idiomatic qualities of the bass and percussion. I mean, it's so different. It's insane. But it'd be kind of cool if you could, you know, something like that. Maybe like you say, the node point thing where you just play that and then just get a little. It's just to get a little kind of a little bit of a ping in there to give the impression of what he did with that. That could be good. And then another little tiny thing is when you get to sort of the main body of the piece after the introduction. I think I just got the impression you could have just played the time maybe in a loose kind of way, a little straighter.
Sure.
And I don't mean you know, like a lot of times things can be influenced by how we count. So I'm not saying you count it 1 and 2 and 3 and, you know, don't do that because that's something, you know, contemporary music, you need to play things, you know, maybe completely over the top straight. But like here, you know, just 1, 2, bum, 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 bum. Just try to keep the, in, you know, kind of a loose, but slightly more solid tempo. I just felt a couple of times that a little technical thing influenced your time. And it could have just been kept a little straighter. Just a tiny bit. And the last thing was, and it really kicked in a lot when you got to the 5/4 section at 24, was I think you need to kind of pedal a little bit more.
Sure.
Could you just try playing 24 with me? Just play 24 and just play the right hand, because that is kind of the melody.
Sure.
So that's good. So I think what you need to do is think you're probably almost on every beat, you need to clear the left hand a little bit more. And just to make it a little clearer again, that, you know, the left hand here for, well, it's 2/5/4 measures repeated 3 times. You're just playing G sharps and the occasional E. So it's clearly the accompaniment part. And again, it was kind of like the bottom end of the instrument is dominating what we're hearing a little tiny bit. So I think you could pedal a little tiny bit more, and just pedal a little bit more and try to bring the right hand out. Okay, Ronan, I like that. Again, like everybody today, so many good things. It was so enjoyable listening to everything. But I'm very impressed about having the nerve to bring your own arrangement in. That's very cool.
Hopefully I'll find someone who can play it now.
No. Hey, look, you're playing it great. Just like literally always a few things. There's always something. Like, you have to get used to the fact that the business we're in, we're constantly open for constructive criticism. This is what we in. Beyond that, I have no time for it, but constructive criticism makes for great music, okay? And while you're there, please thank the commandants, and I don't even know everybody's grade, but thank Mark and Margaret for me, okay?
I will, of course, yeah.
For giving you all the facilities, because that's really nice of them, okay?
Great.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much, Ronan, and thank you, Richard. That concludes our masterclass in terms of participants. So thank you very much to John, Dylan, G, and Ronan for taking part this afternoon. It was an absolute pleasure hearing you play. And Richard, fascinating as always to hear your insights and your comments, and as you put it yourself, your constructive criticism. So thank you for that. So we will now move just into a short Q&A session before we wrap up for the afternoon. So at this point, can I just invite all of our participants to come back on screen, switch back on their audio, and we will start our Q&A with any questions that they might have. So we'll probably go in the order, I think, that people played. So have you something that you would like to ask Richard at this point? Chi, did you hear me? Can you hear me, Chi? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I was just wondering if you had a question for Richard.
Yes. Richard, would you mind sharing some opinion, like if the percussionist, he or she wants to switch their own technique between like the chamber musician and the orchestral player? Would you have any advices, like what kind of the exercise they can do, or what kind of the skill they can do for improving to switch in between?
Okay, no, I know they are different skills, and you know, one of them involves, like, chamber music is obviously very difficult, and they're both difficult. Chamber music really involves sort of following people, no conductor. Generally, you have to play dynamically, where you're not overpowering a very, very small group. Orchestral playing is obviously completely different. where you're following someone else's direction. You have to play a lot more powerfully, but you obviously still have to be creative. I think the idea of being creative, maybe a little tiny bit, I would say playing off the page, sometimes is lost among some orchestral players. So I think what you need to, like, you know, I've been very lucky. I've done a lot of chamber music and I've done a lot of orchestral things. Sometimes it's a matter of, it's not changing your technique, but like for instance, chamber music is all about on percussion, marimba and vibraphone. The orchestra is much more about xylophone and glockenspiel. And as we've seen today in the class, there's a huge difference in how to approach each instrument. If we had, you know, another day, you could just talk about the different ways you strike it. The glock, each one, if you play the marimba like you play a glockenspiel or a xylophone or the vibraphone, they won't sound good. You know, a vibraphone has its own technique too. It almost looks sloppy to a marimba player, but it's not sloppy. It's just a different kind of technique with bar dampening, kind of really playing into the note, where the marimba is using the weight of the stick. Xylophone is about punching the notes. Glockenspiel is about hitting and lifting away from the note. So it's getting those things done. And then obviously chamber music has huge challenges and sometimes huge big setups for multiple percussion, whereas orchestral tends to generally be more virtuoso parts for single instruments, primarily beyond the tune to the snare drum. You know, you want to be an orchestral player, work on your snare drum, and then when you're finished working on the snare drum, work on it some more, because that's what really separates people at auditions. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, yes. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chi, and I hope you can hear me, folks. Okay, I saw a colleague was telling me that my sound was distorting. Dylan, anything that you would like to ask Richard?
Yeah, so Richard, I was just wondering what kind of pieces you usually get your first years to play, or what would you recommend?
What I get first years to play, that has changed radically. I mean, you can go back 10 years ago, and what people were playing third year, people are expected to play first year now. What people would play first year 10 years ago, we have 16-year-olds playing. So it's kind of a movable feast. The standard in Ireland is changing very, very quickly. Basically because really since the late 90s is when I would say current percussion teaching really started, where you have there's like in Ireland you have 3 proper music schools with percussion education happening now. I will get this right. The TU Dublin, the Cork School of Music, and the Royal Irish Academy. They all, you know, there's good teachers, there's good percussion students in all of them. And what I would suggest to play is you go for the pieces that are realistically the most challenging that you can do. Really become almost like a YouTube junkie, where you spend loads of time looking for pieces. I would start with, for instance, probably things like, you know, marimba spiritual, Michi. Some of the earlier Japanese pieces would be would be decent first year pieces. Time for marimba, be good first year piece, maybe second year, something like that. Time for marimba years ago would have been a 4th year recital, but now things have moved along. 4 mallets are expected. In percussion, I look at someone like Casey Cangalosi very carefully. You know, there's a lot of pieces that are insanely difficult, but especially there's a couple of them, I don't even know the name, with like a duet for metronome and snare drum. And those can be very interesting because you think metronome and snare drum, how boring. But he writes these things with like these weird metric modulations which play off of the beat. So the beat stays solid for the entire piece, but as you play, it starts landing in different places where you are, and that becomes part of the piece. Really challenging, but make you think. Timpani really just go for things like the Carter, of course. But I say go online. Look, there's so many. There's like an explosion now of new pieces being written all the time. I'm amazed. Like the students come in with new things each year, just constantly coming in with new pieces that they find, and then I find the occasional gem. I tend to be looking more for percussion ensemble pieces. And then a lot of the students, I'll give them suggestions, but I say try to find something that's interesting where that'll challenge you. I don't know, does that help at all?
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thanks very
And
much.
whatever you do though, like do, whatever your long-term goals are, really do things that are good for you. I know sometimes it's very tempting to like go, I'm going to do this piece for a snare drum, and you play the snare drum with I don't know, a comb and a knitting needle, and it can be very cool, and you're completely fascinated by it, and the audience loves it. But you finish the piece and you go, well, did that actually improve my playing? See, a lot of percussion is that way now. There's a lot of pieces being written that don't improve what we do, the bass skills. So I would recommend really, stick with really high-end rudimental snare drum solos, for instance, as well. Put one of them on the recital, something that's really going to challenge you. As well as don't just do 4 mallets. I love the fact you had the nerve to come out and just play a 2 mallet xylophone solo. That's a skill that is becoming lost a little bit because there's this ultra fascination, all 4 mallets. But the thing is, 95% of any money I made in my career so far has been made playing 2 mallets. So I play 4 mallets for fun. One of my big hobbies is playing jazz vibes. I love it, but I wouldn't want to eat off of it. Someone asked me to come and play a bit of Glockenspiel, but a xylophone. That's where you make your money. So sometimes think what is good for me, and then what is fun, and try to come up with a balance.
Perfect. That was a great answer. Thanks very much, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. John, have you a question for Richard?
Hi, Richard. Yeah, I do have a question. Thanks so much for the masterclass. And I was actually wondering, this is probably a very general question and maybe there's no answer to it, but what is your favorite percussion instrument?
I love the snare drum. I have a lot of snare drums. I love playing them. I probably don't, and I have for a long time, I probably don't practice it the most right now, but I still love playing it probably the most. If I had to pick one thing, I just love playing the snare drum. It's fantastic. I mean, right now, what I'm playing right now is I'm actually taking lessons right now on Persian frame drumming and studying Latin vibes. Completely different than the snare drum, but I'm always trying to work on different things. So on an average night, I might come out, play jazz vibes, Latin vibes for half an hour, 45 minutes, play my frame drum a little bit, and then I have a drum set. So I'll play the drum set for a while too, just for fun. And then a lot of times I play the snare drum because, I do a lot of the lessons online now as well. So, before the lessons, I'm always out here for a half an hour, and, my lovely wife's probably wondering, what is he doing out there again? But, I'm just out there, playing rudiments and stuff, having fun. To me, that's fun. I'm doing what I always wanted to do. And I think if you have fun with what you do, it'll be better. And, you'll be a better, I don't say a better person, but you might be a more fun person, but definitely a better player.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard.
Ronan, a question for Richard?
Hi, Richard. Thanks again for the class. Really
no,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. So good.
Fun. My question is, just coming from personally, the last, my kind of weakest point, I suppose, would be sight reading on mallets. And in the job now as well, especially because I'd mostly be playing snare drum while we're out marching, or if there's school concerts, I might be on the drum set, but I don't get a lot of opportunities to play the mallet as much as I'd like to, and I feel my sight reading, shouldn't be where it is really compared to everything else. So would you have any good suggestions on how to improve on that, or any good books or exercises?
Okay, there's two things. One of them is to practice sight reading. You actually have to do it. Once you've played through something a couple of times, you're not sight reading anymore. So effectively, what you can do, for instance, where you are, you work with, there's flute players, all the woodwind players, all the brass players. You could ask people simply, do you have any grade 1, even grade 1, grade 2 books that you could simply borrow from them? Put a metronome on slow, and that makes you play things at the right time. It's part of sight reading is training your brain to look at something for the first time and to do it at the correct time. That's one thing. So I take sort of early trumpet books, can be flute, anything. Just loads of books. Don't worry about the transposition. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Just play through stuff. And then realize once you've played through it a couple of times, it's not really sight reading anymore. And just put it away. I mean, I'm not a very good piano player, but I do that. That was the thing I forgot when I said, what am I doing? I usually come out and might play piano for a half an hour, 15 minutes a day. But I usually just sight read for half of that. Just something really simple, just to get my head going. So just simply do that, and don't look down at the instrument. Just treat yourself. You only need to see the accidentals, and then you know where the rest of the notes are. So have your music set up to see the accidentals in your peripheral vision. The other thing really quickly is that I was a terrible sight reader, but I'm a decent sight reader now. And I was taught a really simple trick to help as well. Go to a very easy book. It can be your Goldenberg xylophone book or any of these sort of grade 1, grade 2 books. Look at them, take an exercise, and sight read it in a different key. So if something's in C, try to play it in D, where you're just going up everything by one step, and it's sort of 2 sharps instead of no sharp. And then play through things like that. And then if you get a little half decent at that, then get a little more adventurous about different keys you use. Like, I'm gonna do this up a fourth now, or whatever. And then just start adding, different things so it gets a little more. If you do that, and then you go back to play something that's just in the normal key, it's actually quite easy. Because you think about it, you're transposing, your brain is going, oh, I'm looking at a D, but I have to play an E, and I'm in 4 sharps instead of 2 sharps and all this. And then you go back, all I have to do is play it in D now. And there's this relief, and you're sight reading. I did that. I spent a summer doing that, and I came out of the summer as a much better sight reader. It was a little frustrating at times, and there were a lot of bad notes, but hey.
That's great advice, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Richard. Good advice there. Just going to some questions that we have from the members of the public. We have somebody asking, for the lay person, can you briefly explain the difference between xylophone, marimba, glockenspiel, and vibraphone?
Okay, the marimba is probably the oldest of the instruments. It comes from sort of the marimbas found in the Orient, Africa, South America. Basically, it's made of nowadays made out of rosewood. It's low pitched. The overtone series on it is generally in sort of starts at a fifth, I think, and then goes up from starts at an octave and then it goes up in a fifth. There's a different overtone series in xylophone. So basically, it gives a more mellow sound. So if you're listening to, marimba is very, you get that. On a xylophone, I'm using a marimba today. You get these notes, they're very quite sharp at the top. So the xylophone, for a simple part, it's generally much higher pitched with a very, very short decay. The marimba has much more ring and is much lower pitched. The glockenspiels are generally made from steel, and obviously, as we heard, very, very quite highly pitched. So it's very high. Usually if the Glock's playing, if it's doing a duet with anybody, it's with the piccolo. It's always really high. And the vibraphone is probably the newest important tuned instrument. It was invented around 1920 in the United States. Originally, it was a funny instrument. It was invented for, how would you describe it? The Leedy company and then the Deegan company in the States, they invented the vibraphone for playing in vaudeville and for accompanying silent movies as an extra instrument for sound effects. And then there was this thing one day, Lionel Hampton evidently was in a studio playing drum set, which nobody knows about, and he got asked, do you know how to play that? That might sound cool on this. And he went over, he played piano, he went over and took a solo on the vibraphone, and all of a sudden people heard it. And this new instrument, Jazz Vibes, was developed from that. Vibraphone are made from, it's a high-tech instrument in one regard, in that the bars are sort of in a similar range to the mid-range of a marimba, but they're made from aluminium. And the original aluminium it was made for, it was made from aluminium that was developed for aircraft during World War I for lightness. And someone they got these sheets of it and cut it and went, that has a great ring. And all of a sudden, Deegan started to use this, and then other companies use it, and they still basically use the exact same formula of this aircraft aluminium from around like the late sort of 1918, 1919, when they started getting into metal aircraft production. Then, of course, it has its name, the vibraphone, because it has a motor and it has fans that give you electronic vibration. So it's aluminium, wood for marimba, high-pitched wood xylophone, steel for glockenspiel. Sorry for being so long-winded.
Not at all. No, not at all. One other question here. I presume, yes, this is about orchestral percussion, and it's how do you divide the instruments when there are several percussionists in the orchestra? I guess they mean if there's a complex percussion part with several different players.
That is, that is the principal percussion's job, basically. It can be as simple as like I'm playing with the Irish National Opera starting tomorrow for a week, and you get the parts, and you divide them up for the correct number of players. You keep, generally speaking, if you're principal, you take what would be the most prominent part. You think of the people who you're playing with. You think of sometimes their strengths and weaknesses or what they enjoy doing, and you simply divide the parts up that way. Sometimes you divide them up because you want to keep somebody fresh, or you go, I haven't played Mallets in a year, I'm going to play that. Or, so basically there's a certain, there's like a logic to it. You generally look at something and go, it's not always the most difficult part the principal plays. A lot of times it's just the most prominent part. And then you basically just go and go, okay, could you play the bass drum and the triangle here? Could you please do this? And you take pieces of paper and you write their names on it, let them know what they do, and then each person is responsible to prepare, their own part individually.
Okay, thank you. Two more questions. Let me find. Yes. What order should you learn the instruments?
Again, these are one of these things that's changed a lot over the years. When I was learning, and this was just a real fact, 40 years ago. Most percussionists came to percussion via the drum set. I was one of those nightmare neighbors that I was the long-haired drummer who lived next door. No one likes them. And I played drums, and then I was in school, and I thought, I'm going to play in the band, and I want to play in the band. I lived in the States, so I had to play in marching band, so I started playing snare drum. And then I thought, I'd like to do this, and I found out you have to do mallets. And then you learn timbre. So I kind of got into it from being fairly decent at one thing because I loved it, and finding out I had to do other things, to finding out I loved all of them. Nowadays, what you generally do is when we start people, probably for the first year, you start them with a lot of snare drum, with some mallets to get them started. Depends if they play piano or not, but you try and get the mallets and the snare drum going at the same time. And then maybe from the second year, start to introduce the timpani as well. And then this is a really difficult thing, trying to keep on sort of a broad front a whole bunch of instruments going. And then you get faced with, they come back to you in 1 week. I was in band last weekend and I didn't know how to play the sleigh bells, or somebody handed me a whip or and then you kind of go, well, yeah, okay. And you end up having to know how to play like 100 instruments. It's just, but you pick most of them up over the years,
Okay, thank you, Richard. And in that answer, you kind of answered the final question, which was what made you interested in orchestral percussion rather than other percussion routes or careers. But you came at it from drum set into marching band into orchestral percussion.
It was that, yeah. I started music college with really not didn't have like a set career path. I was like, I went in and I thought, let me see what I did. And I think after about a year, I started I really enjoyed the orchestral stuff. And I kept the other things going. I mean, I love it. I always practice improvising and I love all that. But sort of when I was in college, I kind of got steered. I had a couple of very great teachers who just, I remember taking my timpani lessons and teacher said, I think you're going to love this piece. And he said, I was the Brahms Requiem 1 week. And I went home and I listened to it and said, like, that's ridiculous. It's the Brahms Requiem is an amazing piece of music. I had never heard it. And that actually said, I've got to learn how to play timpani decent. And I have played it a couple times and really enjoyed it. So, you hear parts and you went, I had to do that. And eventually that was, what I made my living at. So
great. Well, Richard, thank you so much. That we are out of time now, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with this tune percussion masterclass. I'd like to thank our participants, Chi, John, Dylan, and Ronan. Thank you very much for joining us. I know we're already seeing a lot of you playing already, but I know we're going to see an awful lot more of you as well. So thank you very much for tuning in from wherever you're tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the masterclass. Richard, thank you. This does conclude today's activity, and we hope to see you very soon again, hopefully before too long in the National Concert Hall. But in the meantime, we will be bringing you more masterclasses as we progress through the spring. And please do keep an eye on the National Concert Hall website for upcoming live streams. I know the Symphony Orchestra are back soon, and we'll have a variety of other things coming up over the next few months. So thank you very much, folks, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.